The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is now. Just start. You got to just click record. This is terrible advice. Saying just start is like telling an addict to just quit, telling an angry teenager to just calm down. Not only does it not work and it's terrible advice, but it makes things worse. I want to talk in this video about what you should do instead if you happen to be wanting or looking into starting a YouTube channel or really anything. But this is just kind of me getting over the very first hurdle as being someone who has borderline anxiety disorder. And how did I get to actually be able to record my first video? So my name is Ben. This is the Fixing Software channel. This video will be a little bit different because I also want to chronicle some of my journey a little bit on getting to where I was starting a YouTube channel. And I hope that that helps other people who are considering doing this, in particular those of us in the, we'll say the over 40 crowd. And, you know, I'll talk about a little bit later why I think that that's relevant. And definitely if you're looking for YouTube channel expertise, how to get started and how to pop off, click away. This will be my 6th video on the channel. So I'm definitely not an expert. I just kind of want to share a little bit of, one guy's experience. So what's actually the problem with just start as advice? And really, I think it's kind of bad advice for most people, not just people who are maybe have our borderline anxiety disorder people like myself. Just go to the gym. Oh, you want to lose weight? Just go to the gym. You want to, turn your life around? Just quit. Quit drugs, whatever. Just do anything it doesn't really work for people. And why is that? Because it oversimplifies the problem. Then makes the person end up feeling worse because, wow, it's so easy. It's just so easy and so simple, and I still can't do it. So it actually drives a wedge in their self-confidence and shows just a general lack of empathy for what roadblocks that person might be facing to take their next steps. I have a story of mine that I remember very clearly from when I was a younger man. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know how to use a screwdriver. I didn't know how to use a tape measure. I didn't know how to use, a hammer. And I was really self-conscious about this, because as a white male American, isn't that sort of like my birthright to be able to fix stuff? I'm supposed to be able to change an alternator and refinish a basement. But I couldn't do those things. I wasn't born knowing how to do those things. And there was a time when somebody kind of close to me, and I won't name their names because I really respect this person still. I was trying to figure out how to use a tape measure. Do you run the tape up the side of the wall? I didn't know. I knew what it did, but I didn't have the dexterity to figure out how to use it. And this person kind of chuckled and said, look, if people without a high school diploma can do this, so can you. That was really well-intentioned advice, but just start. It made the problem seem so simple and then the fact that I couldn't actually figure it out made me feel that much worse. So what it did was it kept me from experimenting. It kept me from just being okay, I'll figure it out eventually. Just give me some time. So for anxious people, it kind of is even worse. And I think to understand that, I think you have to understand how the anxious brain works a little bit. And I mean, you've probably heard the term catastrophizing. And that essentially is what the anxious brain does, is it catastrophizes it, everything. It's not very good at assessing risk accurately. It'll assign the same high level of risk to things that are actually pretty low risk. And even knowing this about yourself, you can't always stop it when that starts. You might think it's it's just a a swimming pool, a 10-foot swimming pool, just dive in. You've got a life jacket on, just dive in. But to an anxious person, that's like saying, just jump off this 100-foot diving board without a life jacket into a pool of, alligators. We assess the risk the same way. So what that means is in those situations where we do need to take a bit of a leap, we need to take an action that has some risk, we've already over-assessed the risk, then getting the advice, just start, actually can cripple us into inaction. At least that's how I work. I shouldn't speak for every other person on the planet, but anxiety runs in the family, and that's kind of how we work. And so this is kind of what happened to me when I was really feeling like I needed to branch out. I needed to diversify my skill set. I didn't want to be beholden to a 9-to-5 for the rest of my life. I wanted to find fulfillment in other types of work. And, I was really kicking around starting a YouTube channel. So the anxious brain is going to give you all of the reasons why you're going to fail, why that won't work. And this kind of brings me to why the over 40, I think, is relevant for me, but I think probably for a lot of others, is really I was sort of the last generation that was not digital native. I had my first cell phone at the age of 19. So I spent my entire childhood basically without the internet for sure. I had video games. I did have a computer, but I wasn't online. So social media for me still to this day is like the province of the millennials and the Gen Zs, the Gen Zers. And so it kind of felt like I just wasn't good enough, So, but anyway, consuming a lot of YouTube and seeing predominantly the youth being successful, or a lot of young influencers. And I can't even use emojis correctly. There's all these dialects of emoji, and, having teenagers has trained me up some, but yeah, just using a smiling emoji at the wrong time can be seen as passive aggressive, or using the wrong kind of smiling emoji can be seen as give people the ick. And so there's just all these things that are roadblocks to getting into YouTube for people in my generation. At some point you do have to make a leap, and you do have to overcome these fears. But for an anxious person, they do that differently. It's not just by diving in head first. And you might have heard of the Guti method, Guti. And it's a, sort of maybe like a cognitive behavioral therapy technique or something, but it's basically get used to it, Guti. You dip your toe in the water and you test the waters and you get used to that. And then you put your whole leg in, and then you can maybe get your whole body in. And you after each, progression into the swimming pool or the ocean or whatever it is that you're afraid of, and nothing bad happens, that kind of short circuits that risk, assessment anxiety loop, because nothing bad happened. Okay, so let me try the next thing. And I didn't die. The way I ended up approaching this, because I swirled in this for months. And I consumed so much YouTube, and at one point I decided, it's just not for me. Even though deep down I thought, I really want to do this, even if it's just for myself. And nobody watches the videos. It's something I want to do, as a growth for myself. So instead of just start, it's just decide. At some point, I decided that I was going to do it. Then I started telling other people. It would just come up in conversation kind of naturally. Well, I'm going to make a video about that. That'd be a good video idea. Once I decided, that was kind of like that dipping that toe in a little bit. So I think it's replacing just start with just decide. Planning and working through some of those worst case scenarios is part of being a person of action with anxiety. Probably a good 6 or 8 weeks of just pure note taking. So kind of data dumping. Anytime I had an idea, that might be something cool, a content idea, or something that I was actually really interested or I had a strong opinion about, I would take a note of it. And I just used one note on my phone. So wherever I was, I would pull the phone up, take note of it. So I ended up with hundreds of ideas. So that was one fear that I was able to tackle, that, well, I don't know what kind of videos to make. Well, I came up with hundreds of ideas once I started, actually not judging every idea as soon as they came up, but just logging it down. Just start data dumping from your brain into your notes. And at some point, you move from just decide to just act. That doesn't mean you have to just grab your phone and just start recording and toss a video up on YouTube. And that to me was like sweaty palms. Like I wouldn't have started if that was my approach. The next thing I did was I purchased all of my equipment. And by equipment, I mean like a $50 mic, because I wanted a decent mic, a mic stand. I'm using my iPhone. I already had a computer. I did get a cheap light box. I did not spend much money at all. But once I had that equipment, it became more real, so that was kind of like the next dipping the leg in or whatever. And then that equipment sat in boxes in my dining room, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. But that was the next step to kind of making this become real for me. I could do another video on more specifics of the equipment and the setup and how I took notes, how I organized my thoughts to get to that first video. But who knows if I'm someone you're going to want to emulate anyway. This is my 6th video. So the last thing I'll say about how the anxious mind works is pretty much as soon as you can prove to the anxiety brain that nothing bad's going to happen, it kind of backs off. And as soon as I made my first video and I uploaded it, and I clicked the button and it uploaded and it was posted, and I shared it with my friends and family, so many of those fears just dropped away. Once I got to that first video, my confidence just went through the roof almost overnight. It was pretty amazing. Just the feeling that I had. And at that point, kind of all of the anxieties that I had around, I'm not going to get any views, and I'm going to, the cringe factor, the embarrassment, because, you hate your own voice, worried about what your friends and family might say, that kind of fell off, honestly, a little bit. And I just, I felt like I could do stuff. I was powerful. I could put something into the world. And to take an act of courage and just see what happens. So that's life-changing, even if the channel doesn't go anywhere. Make a decision that you and your future and your self-worth and that of your family, it's worth the risk, even if your mind is overstating that risk. And that's it. Many thanks. Best of luck to you. And I would love to get some comments and get a little bit of a discussion going and understand what kind of content you might want to see in the future. And even your own journey on, trying to launch a YouTube channel. Would love to hear it.